On this occasion, I'm not going to describe the Last Supper itself as succinctly set out in the four Gospels and in most detail, as we all know, in St John's Gospel. I'm instead going to help set the scene, and that can be useful when one is praying with the Gospels in a meditative fashion. One can see then, after I've read what I've read, what the room is like, for example. But I'm also going to describe what I think a very significant incident in the period just before the supper begins, and it shows the tension between the apostles, or within the apostolic group, due to Judas Iscariot, his manner, his behaviour. And I think that sheds a lot of light on where we've come to and helps give some understanding of the subsequent events. As we know, during that supper, Judas goes out and betrays our Lord. Maria Valtorta's writings deal with Judas in a very detailed way, as with everything else. In the Gospels, we know very little of him, just that he was the betrayer, really. But with these visions that Maria Valtorta had, we can see a 3-year process which leads to the betrayal that takes place as Judas leaves the supper room. So to begin, to set that scene, as I mentioned, this is from the vision given to Maria Valtorta on the 9th of March 1945. The suffering of Maundy Thursday is beginning. The apostles, there are 10 of them, are bustling about, preparing the supper room. Judas, who has climbed on the table, is watching whether there is oil in all the lamps of the big chandelier that looks like the corolla of a double fuchsia, because its stem is surrounded by 5 lamps in small vessels similar to petals. And under them there is another circle or crown of small flames. And finally, there are 3 thin lamps hanging from tiny chains resembling the pistils of the bright flower. He then jumps down on the floor and helps Andrew to lay the tableware in an artistic style on the table, on which a very fine tablecloth has been spread. I hear Andrew say, "What a wonderful linen tablecloth." And the Iscariot says, "One of Lazarus's best ones. Martha insisted in bringing it." "And what about these chalices and these amphorae?" remarks Thomas, who has poured some wine into the precious amphorae and is admiring them, looking at himself in their slim bellies, and he caresses the chiselled handles with the eye of a connoisseur. See here, Thomas, as we'll see shortly, his profession before he became an apostle was to do fine gold work and silver work. It was effectively a jeweller. So to continue on the narrative. "Phew, I wonder how much they are worth," exclaims Judas Iscariot. And then Thomas replies, with his professional knowledge, "It is worked by hammer. My father would go mad for it. Silver and gold foils are shaped easily when heated, but done with such craft. Everything can be spoiled in a moment. One wrong blow is enough. It takes strength and a light hand at the same time. See the handles? They've been shaped out of the block. They're not soldered. Things for rich people. Just consider that all the filings and cast-off parts are lost. I don't know whether you understand me." Phew, I understand you very well. In short, it is like sculpture. Exactly. They all admire, and then go back to their work. Some arrange the seats, some prepare the sideboards. Peter and Simon come in together. Just to break off there, as you heard at the beginning, there were 10 apostles bustling about that Maria Valtorta saw. So Peter and Simon have come in now to make the 12. "Oh, you've come at last. Where have you been again? After you came with the Master and us, you ran away again," says the Iscariot. "We had another errand before supper time," replies Simon briefly. By the way, this Simon is Simon the Zealot. Both he and Peter are middle-aged men. And Simon the Zealot, though, was a leper. Jesus cured him. He's one of the first apostles. One of the first, not the first. And how did he get his leprosy? Well, he was a zealot, as he's called. And that was a political group which was militantly against Roman occupation. And like so many of them, he was hunted by the Romans, and eventually he had no choice but to take shelter in a zone where lepers remained, because the Romans wouldn't go there. But that is how he caught leprosy. And he still bears the marks of the leprosy, although he was cured by Jesus. I think it says so in another part of this document, the poem of a man God, or the gospel is revealed to me. So Judas Iscariot carries on speaking to Simon the Zealot. "Are you suffering from depression?" Simon replies, "I think there's every reason to be so, considering what we have heard these past days, and from those lips that we've never found to be false." Just to interject there, what Peter and Simon are doing, they're going around because they're aware, now that Jesus has entered Jerusalem, Palm Sunday has passed, so they're in Jerusalem, they're aware that Jesus is in great danger. And although it's never said expressly in the poem of the man God, they seem to be on a mission to try and prevent anything bad happening to Jesus, as it's suspected this will happen. Hence, Judas Iscariot sees depression on the face of Simon the Zealot. So Simon has said that they've heard certain things these past days, which mean things don't look good. And St Peter says, "And with that stench of, well, be quiet, Peter," grumbles Peter between his teeth. "And you as well? You seem to have gone mad for some time. Your face is like that of a wild rabbit that realises it's being chased by a jackal," replies Judas Iscariot. Peter responds to that, "And your face is like the snout of a weasel. You've not been very handsome either these last few days. You look in such a way, you're even cross-eyed. What do you expect? What do you hope to see? You seem to be self-confident. You want to appear so. But you look like one who is afraid," retorts Peter. "Oh, with regard to being afraid, you're not a hero either." Now John replies to that, "None of us is, Judas. You have the name of the Maccabee, but you're not such. I, with my name, say, God grants graces. But I swear to you that I tremble like a man who knows that he brings mischance, and above all, that he has lost God's favour. Simon of Jonah, renamed the Stone, is now as soft as wax near a fire. He no longer gets the weather gauge of his own free will. And yet I've never seen him frightened in the most violent storms. Matthew, Bart and Philip look like sleepwalkers. My brother, that is James, and Andrew do nothing but sigh. The two cousins, who are grieved because of their family ties and of their love for the Master, look at them They already look like old men. Thomas has lost his cheerfulness, and Simon seems to have become again the exhausted leper of 3 years ago. So much is he worn out by grief. I would say that he's worn away, deathly pale, dejected, John replies to Judas Iscariot. Before I move further on with this dialogue, or trialogue, the two cousins that are referred to are St Jude and St James of Alphaeus. James of Alphaeus, apostle, to be distinguished from James, the brother of St John, apostle. Just focusing on Jude and James of Alphaeus. Jude and James of Alphaeus, both are the sons of Alphaeus, a man called Alphaeus, as are two other men who are not apostles, Simon and Joseph. So we have Jude, James, Simon and Joseph, 4 sons of Alphaeus. And those 4 names, Jude, James, Simon and Joseph, you'll recall from the Gospels, from the Synoptic Gospels. Their father, as I've said, is a man called Alphaeus. Another name for him is Clopas. And his wife, the mother of these 4 men, is called Mary Clopas. And she and he are mentioned in the New Testament, in the Synoptic Gospels. Alphaeus, the father of these 4 men, James, Jude, Joseph and Simon, dies shortly after the public ministry of Jesus has begun. Mary Clopas lives on, and she becomes one of the holy women. So she's with the Blessed Virgin, Mary Magdalene, St Martha, Joanna, Susanna, throughout the public ministry of Jesus. And just to get that bit of the family tree also clear for you, Alphaeus, the father of the 4 men, is the brother of St Joseph. St Joseph, as we know, is the husband of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And Jesus is the natural son of the Blessed Virgin Mary, or rather the supernatural son of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and the foster son of St Joseph. Hence, these 4 men, James, Jude, Joseph and Simon, are cousins of Jesus in a legal sense, not in a physical sense, because St Joseph is only the foster father of Jesus. And as far as I know, Mary is not a physical relation of Alphaeus or Mary Clopas. So Jesus is called the brother, the Adelphos, of these 4 men. They're children not of the Blessed Virgin Mary, they're children of Mary Clopas and Alphaeus. So hopefully that clarifies the family tree. This is Jesus' family. These are the ones who came down, as St Mark recalls, for example, to try and bring him back to Nazareth because they thought he'd gone mad, and they brought the Virgin Mary with them. But she was not a willing participant of that. But family in the Middle East, like now, was then everything. So to continue the narrative, having set out who is who. And so we have, St John has looked at the various apostles, and he's described how miserable they are at this point, how dejected they are, compared to what they normally would have been. They're all aware there's a big black cloud over Jesus and over them. Judas Iscariot lays this at the feet of Jesus. He blames Jesus, as you'll see from the next sentence, which I quote, that Judas gives in response to St John's statement. Though St John, as you'll have noticed, he talks about dejectedness of the apostles, but he does not say it's Jesus' fault. So here's what Judas says. Yes, he, Jesus, has influenced us all with his melancholy, remarks the Iscariot. James of Alphaeus responds to that. My cousin Jesus, my Master and Lord and yours, is and is not melancholy. If you mean by that word that he is sad because he's being excessively grieved by the whole of Israel, as we are aware, and because of the other hidden sorrow that he alone sees, I say to you, you're right. But if you use that word to say that he's mad, I forbid you to do so, says James of Alphaeus. But Judas is not finished. And is a fixed melancholy idea, not madness? I've studied also profane matters, and I know. He's given too much of himself. Now he's mentally tired. Which means that he's insane? Is that right? Asks the other cousin, Jude Thaddeus, who's apparently calm. And Thaddeus is another name for Jude that we meet in the Gospels. Jude Thaddeus, or Judas Thaddeus. So St Jude has said, so Judas, you're implying that he's insane. Is that right? And there's a calmness on Jude Thaddeus when he's saying this. Do you see why that's important in a minute or two? So Judas Iscariot replies, exactly. How right was your father, a man of blessed memory, whom you resemble so much in justice and wisdom. You see, just breaking off the dialogue again, Judas Iscariot is referring to how impressed he is with the father of Jude Thaddeus, that is, Alphaeus, and he calls him of blessed memory, because he's dead. As I said, he died early in the public ministry. But Judas is referring to him because Alphaeus was against Jesus. Violently against, well, I shouldn't say violently because he never hurt anybody, but he was enraged at Jesus taking away his two sons as he saw it, Jude and James of Alphaeus, and he would have nothing to do with this madness of going about as the Messiah and being feted by the crowds. In the end, as he was dying, Alphaeus called for Jesus. But Jesus didn't physically get to him before he died. And I think if I remember rightly, Jesus did say, though, that he's in spirit did get to him at the last moments of life. I think he said that to console Mary Clopas at one point. But Jesus had conversations with Alphaeus, who was very hostile to him. Very hostile. And it made Jesus very sad. Let's not get to the impression that, oh, here's God walking on the earth. As if we're heretics who believe that Jesus just appears to be a man. No, he's fully human as well as being fully God. And the fully human means he can get upset. And these family troubles deeply upset him. But I shall continue anyway. So Judas Iscariot, in response to Jude Thaddeus, saying, oh, you mean Jesus is insane? Iscariot says, exactly. How right was your father, a man of blessed memory, whom you resemble so much in justice and wisdom? Jesus, the sad destiny of an illustrious family, now too old and struck by psychic senility, has always had a disposition to this illness. Mild at first, then more and more aggressive. So once again, let's stop for a moment. Judas Iscariot, when he refers to the illustrious family, now too old, he's talking about the Davidic line. David becomes king 1,000 years before Jesus is born. The house of David begins and has now lasted up to the year of our Lord, the years our Lord walks on the earth. 1,000-year-old family line, too old and senile now, Judas Iscariot suggests. And so Judas Iscariot goes on. You've seen how he, Jesus, attacked Pharisees and scribes, Sadducees and Herodians. He's made his life impossible, like a road strewn with quartz splinters. And he spread them himself. We've loved him so much that our love veiled our eyes. But those who did not love him in an idolatrous manner, your father, your brother Joseph, and at first also Simon, saw right. When we heard their words, we should have opened our eyes. Instead, we were all enticed by Jesus' meek charm of a sick person. And now, who knows? And so we have here Jesus being very much disparaged by Judas Iscariot. He made things worse for himself, according to Judas Iscariot, getting into fights with these Pharisees, scribes, Sadducees and Herodians. He's made life difficult for himself. He's brought all these difficulties upon himself. And we, the apostles, Judas Iscariot says, we loved him too much. We didn't realise, we didn't see what Alphaeus and your brothers, Judas, Thaddeus, saw, Simon and Joseph, that we didn't see what we should have seen with cold clarity. That he was ruining himself, that Jesus was ruining himself. And as you saw, that refers to Joseph, and at first also Simon, because as I've said elsewhere, that Simon, although he wasn't an apostle, he didn't become an apostle, he came to Jesus, he gradually warmed to Jesus' mission and accepted him as the Messiah. It was Joseph who was the last holdout. And at this point, still, Judas Iscariot thinks Joseph is hard as a rock against Jesus and his mission. So Jesus enticed us all by his meek charm of a sick person, the Iscariot is saying. And now, who knows? So that's the really cutting assessment of Jesus by the Iscariot. So watch what happens next. And this has never before happened, and never happens again, in the entirety of the public life of Jesus, according to the visions of Maria Valtorta, and certainly not in the Gospels. Judas Thaddeus, who is as tall as the Iscariot, and is standing just in front of him, and seems to be listening to him peacefully, has an outburst of rage, and with a mighty backhanded blow knocks Judas down with his back on one of the seats, and with anger repressed in his voice, bending over the face of the coward who does not react, as he's probably afraid that Thaddeus may be aware of his crime. He whispers, "This is for his insanity, you reptile. And only because he's in the other room, and this is Passover evening, I will not strangle you. But remember this, and remember it carefully. If any evil befalls him, and he is not there to check my strength, no one will save you. The halter is as good as round your neck. And these strong, honest hands of mine, the hands of a Galilean artisan and of a descendant of Goliath's slinger, will do the job for you. Get up, you spineless debauchee, and watch how you behave." So we'll pause there